Good evening. I'm Dr. Gus Penix, President of the Nicholas County Board of Education. I'd like to call this February the 1st, 2021 regularly scheduled meeting to order at this time. Would you please rise and join the board for a moment of silent reflection? Gives us that opportunity to reflect on those things for which we have to be thankful, but also clear our hearts and minds for the business we're going to consider here this evening. So if you would, please, a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. If you would, join us in saluting our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. The first item of consideration, actually item 3 on our agenda, is to approve the minutes for meetings held on December 7th, 2020, January 4, 15, 25, and 27 of 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the meetings held on December 7th, 2020, January 4, 15, 25, and 27 of 2021? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Amick moves. Is there a second to the motion?
I ask for clarification on that. Was it done?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? And then we'll have discussion.
Second.
Mr. Berry, second. Okay, now, Mr. Moose, go ahead.
Well, we had a lengthy discussion about the clarification of my motion to say what the motion was, and I don't know that any clarification was made on that.
Okay, all right, now.
That's why we delayed this December 2nd.
Right, and then at the last meeting, when we discussed this, we said for you to bring or get the items that you wanted to reflect upon those meeting minutes to Mrs. Valletto, and also the superintendent could bring her part of it as well. Did you bring those to Mrs. Valletto?
No,
They're
sir.
right here.
I didn't receive it when,
And therefore, I did not prepare response because there was nothing submitted.
no, it's been 4 weeks.
And I believe as you read the minutes, they reflect what happened in the meeting on that particular night, that you objected to the statement in there, and we put that in the December the 7th, 2020 minutes. So that is reflected in those minutes. And remember, the minutes are just a reflection of actually what happened at the meeting. We can't go back and alter them to say what we would like for them to say at a future date. We simply can report what happened in that meeting. So, any further discussion?
Well, I didn't ask for a change, I just asked for clarification.
Well, clarification of what? I mean, I'm not understanding what you want.
Well, it just says, let the record show that Mr. Moose expressed a contradiction to part of the minutes for the November 16, 2020 meeting. I just asked that say that I expressed a contradiction to the fact that FEMA did authorize and say that the H&H study needed to be done. That was my
And then last meeting.
That was my contradiction.
Okay, the last meeting, we offered you, or not the last meeting, but one of the meetings the last meeting we talked about these minutes, we said, get your information to Mrs. Valletto on how you want this corrected. And then the superintendent disagreed. We said, get your information to Mrs. Valletto if you see that there's a correction that needs to be made on your part. And that wasn't presented to her, so I mean, we have a set of minutes here that are standing out that need to be approved. that have such information in it is in regard to the dental optical plan. We have people that are going to the dentist right now. And the reason I say that is our plan was put into effect that night to pay 100% of the coverage. Now, they're still yet being charged 80/20 because they haven't been informed, about what happened as an actual action of that board meeting. So I think we got to move on. So, I don't know what else to say there. We gave opportunity.
I gave her
Both
the
sides.
electronic copy of that night.
But
There
it
was
wasn't-
other sections. There was, what we had asked for was to see it, the thread of emails in its entirety. Because taking a small section from an email reading was definitely not showing the full picture, and that's what we had asked for. And of course, you can roll back the cameras and see exactly what was asked for. And that once you provided that, I could provide information to show that, that you were only showing a small snippet of the information. So anyway, it was clearly asked for to see it in its entirety, and you never sent it. So, of course, I brought nothing because there was nothing for me to present.
Okay, any further discussion? I have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes for December the 7th, January 4th, 15th, 25th, and 27th of 2021. It's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have Mr. Berry, Mr. Amy, Mrs. Kaufman, and Mr. Penix voting in favor, and Mr. Moose voting in opposition to the motion. Motion carries 4-1. Our next item on the agenda is recognition. We have none tonight. Item 5, discussion items and presentations, none. Item 6, action item, approval of the MOU renewal with the New River Health Associates, or Health Association. Who presents?
Now, what, did we just approve all the minutes?
You voted against it, you didn't approve, but we voted yes.
No, I didn't vote against all the minutes. I only voted against December the 7th. I don't vote against
The January, the other
the
meeting.
January 4th, 15th, 25th, or 27th.
Would it please the board if we were to go back and single out the December 7th meeting and then vote on the others? Would you all be okay to that?
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. All right, okay. The vote, I don't know how to do this.
I don't know.
Actually, I think you're going to have to reconsider your previous action and then reoffer the motion. And
Okay.
split it up that way.
All right,
Because you did take action on it.
so we're going to have to do a reconsideration by voting on the reconsideration. Is that correct?
Yes.
The board would vote to reconsider, and then we'll take each of those up separately. Or just, divide them out, December the 7th, and then the January, all 4 of those meetings in January is separate.
Correct.
Okay, rescind. Is there a motion to rescind the previous vote on the minutes for the meetings held on December the 7th, 2020, January 4, 15, 25, and 27, 2021? Is there a motion to rescind? Mr. Amick moves. Is there a second? Sorry. Mr. Moose, you second?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Who said first?
Mr. Amick made the motion, and Mr. Moose seconded the motion. Any further discussion on rescinding the action that we just took on those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, the motion passes unanimously. Now, the December 7th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the December the 7th, 2020 minutes of the meeting held on December the 7th, 2020? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make
Mr. Berry moves. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Mrs. Kaufman seconds. Any further discussion in regard to those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Madam Secretary, let the record reflect that board members Amy, Berry, Kaufman, and Penix voted in favor of the motion, and Mr. Moose voted to oppose the motion. Now, is there a motion? Are you with that?
Yep.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the January 4th, 15th, 25th, and 27th meeting minutes? Mr. Amy moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Berry seconds. Any further discussion in regard to the meeting minutes for January the 4th, 15th, 25th, 27th, 2021? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, the motion passes unanimously. Now, back to item 6, action items, approval of the MOU renewal with New River Health Association.
It's just a basic renewal, it's just an annual renewal of the healthcare services, saying we provide a space, and they provide, oversight and malpractice insurance and things like that for all their current, it's just a standard renewal.
Which schools are those in, New River Health in?
It's in Nicholas County High School, Somersville Middle, so I'm not sure that I remember all of them.
Is Panther Creek?
They're-
Panther Creek's
No, Panther Creek is Camden.
not.
I had trouble keeping up with that.
Somersville Elementary School.
Somersville Elementary is
Camden.
Camden,
Okay.
so it's Somersville Middle, or not Somersville, it's, Somersville Middle and Nicholas County High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the standard agreement. You did receive electronically, by the way. And it is a standard agreement. We've been working with them for at least the last, well, all the years I've been on the board, so I'd say for the last 6 to 10 years. So, any questions in regard to the MOU with New River Health Associates? Is there a motion to approve the MOU renewal with New River Health Association?
So moved.
Mr. Amick moves. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Mr. Berry seconds. Any further discussion in regard to the renewal of this contract or this agreement? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign.
I abstain,
Mr. Moose abstains.
and that's not to be a positive or a negative, that is, I abstain, I have to abstain.
Understand. Madam Secretary, let the record reflect that board members Amy, Berry, Kaufman, and Penix voted in favor of the motion, and Mr. Moose abstained he just abstained.
Okay.
Item 7 on the agenda, consent items, finance, Mr. Hess. You received payment of current invoices and treasurer's report and other financial information this evening.
Yes. We made a check run earlier today, so we emailed those out a few hours ago for you to review. Also handed those out to you as a last-minute review. The first thing on the finance agenda is payment of current invoices, if you have any questions.
Just one thing, page 8, there's a negative balance on building improvements.
On the treasurer's report,
Yes, sir.
Well, payment of current invoices right now, correct?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Moose, hang on a second. We'll do a treasurer's report in just a minute.
Oh, am I on the wrong?
You're just a little ahead of yourself, but that's okay.
Okay, so, which one are we on?
Payment of current invoices.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Hess in regard to payment of current invoices? And I remind you that you did receive about 6 pages of checks that were written today, is that correct?
That is correct.
And might want to look over those and see if you have any questions.
Most of those were utilities or payments that would have a late fee if they waited to our next meeting. Next item is treasurer's report for December. So I'll go through that with you. First page is the revenues for the general fund, and if you'll look at the bottom, you'll see a $56.7 million budget. We've received $18.4 million. We have $38.3 million available or still yet to receive, which overall about 32% of our budget has been received. Now, that isn't, as an overall number, that's not really something that we should be concerned about. If you look at the first two lines, your real estate and your personal, your excess levy collections on the first two lines, in December is 50% through the year, and we received 74.3% on both of those.
Kevin, is that about where we are in other years? I mean, at 74% or?
I'd have to go back and look. It seems like we're in pretty good shape, actually, compared to previous years from memory.
Seems like it's a little bit ahead of.
Yeah, yes. Now, the second half of collections always, January, February's, and it's usually pretty slim, and then it'll pick up for March and April, and then start to decline in May and June. But we should, if all goes well, be able to meet our budget on those two line items. I am a little concerned on our interest. We budgeted $200,000 worth of interest. We've only received $30,000. So we're about $70,000 short in our interest from where we projected we would be. Just, I guess, a decline in rates. We have, let's see, we have nearly $17.4 million invested in some type of CD or money market account, which with a higher rate of interest than just your standard checking. So we're really doing about the best we can under the current conditions. So, you know, how's it going to affect us? Well, if we only collect $60,000 of the $200,000, obviously we're $140,000 short on what we budgeted. And so we budgeted expenses to pay with that money. So very likely that will cut into our bottom line. And that's with every line item. If we don't receive what we anticipate, then it's going to be felt on the bottom line.
Kevin, on your student activities, and then you flip it over there for support services for students, and percent of the budget committed is 98%. What will that do with the rest of the year if that amount has already been committed?
Now, I got the first part. Where are you referring to on the second part of your statement?
Student support services for students, 98%.
Yeah, let me see that. Okay, I'll address it. All right, so on the revenue section, the student activity report, the student activity, that is, as you can see, we budgeted $100,000 there, only received $8,700. That represents when we take students to athletic events, we bill the schools for the cost of the transportation. And so then they basically just reimburse the board for the cost of all the athletic or extracurricular trips. And that just generally comes out of their booster money or their excess levy money that's provided for athletics or that particular group. So since we haven't had that many activities or any sporting events, that's why you see that revenue is way down. plus side of that, or the flip side of that is we don't have any expenses. We're not taking trips, so therefore we don't have any labor to pay out. So that one really won't have a dramatic effect at all on our bottom line. And I'll address your second question when we flip down to that page, if you don't care. State aids at 44%, that will come in without any issue. There's a few lines in there that will only be budgeted at or recognized at year end, like the retirement on behalf, the $4.2 million.
On the same page that Fred was referring to, it says food service 496%.
Let me find it. You guys are ahead of me.
Page 7, same page, Fred.
Yeah. Okay. I'll address that when I jump down to that part.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm getting
I
there.
thought we were on Fred's page.
No, I'm getting there.
Okay, excuse me.
You're fine.
Go ahead.
Revenues, the interest is a little bit of a concern to me at this point. The rest of it should be fine. Debt service, there's no revenues. Capital projects fund, that's our school construction site, our projects. You can see there's very little been received because we haven't had any expenses, and that's basically a reimbursement method. We'll incur the expense, receive the money back through FEMA and the state, and then pay the bill. At the bottom of that page, you can see the different balances and the different accounts that we have and across the different funds. Then if you look at the next page, it's your special revenue funds. That's your federal and your state grants, $11.2 million. We've received $2.5 million, and we have $8.7 million to receive. Again, we spend those funds first, and then we're reimbursed for them. Special revenue funds for the stimulus, you can see that we have $1.2 million in federal CARES money. We've received $960,000 of that, and about $288,000 yet to receive.
Is there another, I read in the paper that we're going to get another share of that, is that correct?
There is.
And we haven't received any notification on total amount?
We have received an estimate which should be about 4 times that amount.
4 times this amount? So we're talking about $800,000?
We're talking about $4.8 million.
I mean, 4 point.
4 times, yeah.
My math's not really good tonight, but anyway. 4.8, 1.2, 4.8, I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so altogether, if it all comes through, it'll be about $6 million of CARES money for just Nicholas County, our school system.
And so with that, we can do anything that's related to the relief of.
There are some guidelines. It basically has to be COVID related in some form or fashion.
So what you were saying earlier, where there was a little bit of a shortfall, will that help with that, or can that go in? It will.
Yeah. No, it will not help us in the general fund and in the shortfall of interest, because your general fund just is what we operate from. This CARES money has to be used. It has certain guidelines or scope that it has to be spent for. So it has the ability to help offset any expenses we had in the general fund related to COVID, which would help. But it's not going to replace, or we're going to be short on interest. We're just going to be short on interest. There's nothing, I'm not going to be able to put extra money in there just because we have CARES money. Does that make sense?
And did we receive all that, Kevin, or just a portion
Of what?
of the CARES money?
We've received $960,000 of it so far.
Okay, well, yeah, I was listening to the news, and they said they hadn't spent nearly, they were talking about not spending, here they want to pass the second bill, but they hadn't spent most of the first bill yet.
Yeah, there was some discussion about that in our meeting where, all of this is goes through the state and the state auditor, so they know how every county and every state, how they're drawing down that money and how they're spending that money. So any lag that the counties have on our end on spending it, it doesn't show, of course, at their level, and so it appears that we're not spending it. It could be that we haven't incurred those expenses, they don't have a plan for how they intend to spend it. It could be a variety of reasons why it's not showing up as spent yet, but we've spent a good bit of ours, and we'll get to that here in just a second.
Yeah, but I mean, we bought all new iPads and protectors and everything. What else is there to buy? That's 4 times what we already had.
I mean, it'll help us with our renewal on iPads. I mean, we've got a lot of things we can do that would be taken out of our funds that would be typically, I mean, we will have a very detailed plan laid out that will help us in the future with, like I said, we've got replacement plans and things like that for iPads. We'll have a very detailed plan.
Do
We
they have
can definitely spend it, because there's a lot of expense associated with COVID, with, a lot of different things that happen to pay for extra custodians and the cleaning and, the hand sanitizers, and, I mean, there's just a lot associated that people don't realize.
Just the loss of students alone, just through virtual or the not, we lost 140 students.
That's a
Those
lot.
students that we can equate to this COVID, whether they're homeschooled or going to private school, if we would just have to justify that loss, and then therefore, then we could use some of the CARES money to help offset that loss in enrollment.
Yeah.
So that's just one way that we'd be able, or another way that we'd be
Keep
able
us from
to.
ripping as many teachers as we would with the loss. I mean, it's a pretty good loss.
Well, you say it has to be COVID related. Well, we wouldn't have a shortfall if it wasn't for COVID.
Right, well, we would hope not, yes, right.
So what could you use that for?
You can use it for anything COVID related. It has to be justified for its purpose.
the,
2 days a week is COVID related.
is there a limit on the time? Do we have a limit on the time right now?
September 2023.
Oh,
That's
okay,
what's
you got
spent.
2.5 years.
Yeah. Now, the thing about, it's a two-edged sword, this money. If you say, well, we lost 140 students, that's 80 kids more than we normally lose, so we're not going to reduce staff. Or we're going to use that money and not reduce staff. That's fine, but then next year when we lose 60 kids and we don't have CARES money to offset that, now you're looking at the loss of 140 this year plus 60 from next year. So a huge loss in state aid, and then you're going to have to you'll have massive amount of cuts to be able to fund your school system. So you always have to keep up with your cuts and your loss of enrollment, else it will come back to bite you. But in the short term, the CARES money can really help the county in multiple ways.
Well, like, for example, we are using that midday cleaning, and we are employing people to come in and do that, correct?
Yes.
And we're having multiple extra bus runs for internet, whatever. So those can be charges that we would use against
Yes,
that.
those are perfect examples of what it should be used for.
And perhaps even, would it affect any of the food service? I mean, if you're doing extra meals or anything like that, does that?
Yeah, any unreimbursed costs that we have through the food service program, and it was COVID related, it certainly could cover that.
The pretty good sized bill for the packed lunches that we got this time.
You can see, you see
That would
those.
be used for that?
It could be, but our reimbursement on that is actually fairly good.
Okay.
And so if it's not, if it's right close to 100% one way or the other, so there really shouldn't be much of a loss on those box lunches. Now, we haven't completely crunched the numbers yet to see that, but just based upon our original bids and the cost and the amount of reimbursement, it doesn't look like we're going to have much of a loss in that area, or didn't.
Now, I assume we're keeping all our buildings heated every day, constant temperature?
Yeah, I would assume so, yes.
Is that a loss because we don't have students in them?
Well, it would have to be costs, I don't know, I'd have to ask about that. It, probably not if you had, I don't know. If you had costs over what you normally had, you might, and you could
Yeah, I
justify
realize
it.
if we had students in them, you'd have that cost,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a teeter-totter there.
Yeah, we'd have to, we had a webinar about it the other day, and I was really amazed at some of the questions that some people were just coming up with. They're very creative in could we do that, and so we got answers to several of them. But basically it all rolls back to COVID and how it has affected your county, and the county, I think the government doesn't want the counties to suffer any losses due to this pandemic. So, I think we touched there on our federal CARES money as the revenues. Now let's get down to the expense side.
Rocky
And-
wants to know if he can make a comment on that.
Pardon?
Rocky wants to know if it's okay for him to make a comment. He's online.
He's on Teams meeting, Rocky's on Teams.
Oh, Rocky wants to comment?
Hey, Kevin?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
The heating, cooling idea, when the buildings were empty, we set everything on unoccupied. So you might have saved a tad on the heating, cooling. But I just want you to know, when the buildings were empty, they were set on unoccupied mode.
Okay. There you go.
You freeze us out in here, so has it been unoccupied?
You know, in the delivery of instruction during this time, particularly the remote, has that added in cost in any area? Chris, perhaps you could answer that.
I mean, our
Other than the machines that we were,
Hot spots.
the hotspots?
Yeah, we did provide hotspots for our social workers, so we have 4 that, yes, social workers, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so they do make house visits, so that has been an extra charge. I think it's been kind of costly, but I think we had to buy those and then pay the monthly fee and then,
If I just might take that a step further, not about finances, but how is that working out there? I mean, are we getting to 100% of the kids out there?
well, schoolwork, you can do it without internet, so I think the teachers are doing a pretty good job of assigning assignments they can do without internet. A lot of times they offer 2 lessons, because if they can use other apps that have internet, they are more effective and probably more interactive, and so, yes, I believe we're reaching kids. If they try, they can absolutely get what they need. But if they have internet, I think they do have a better experience. But they are getting all the lessons.
We're actually providing buses to go pick up iPads. So if a student needs the iPad picked up to have the coursework loaded or downloaded, then all they have to do is place a phone call, and a bus driver goes out, picks up the iPad, takes it back to the school or back to one of the artisans, they load the information, it goes right back out to them. So we're actually providing a service. I don't know if any other counties are actually doing that or not, but we just thought that was probably the best way to reach students and, getting them as much service as we could.
Those would certainly be costs that we could.
Is that at each school?
Anywhere in the county, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, you're fine.
interfere with your presentation.
Okay, under the general fund, again, $56.7 million budget. We've expended $12.7 million. We have payroll encumbered of $16.6 million, which leaves your budget available of just over $27 million. So overall, we've committed 52% of our budget. Now, if you look at the very first line, $19.4 million is budgeted directly for regular and secondary education. That's your instruction, your teachers, anything related to instruction. And so if you go across that line, from July 1 through December, we'd spent $5.1 million. From December through through June, we will have $8.5 million in payroll, and which will leave $5.7 million available in that line item as of December. Now, we also budgeted a bunch of other things in instructions, supplies, equipment, so on and so forth. So that includes your salaries and any overhead expenditures. Now, Mr. Amick asked about line 2, where we have 98% committed at December. And so that is support services for students. And so we were funded for additional staff, support staff, your behaviorists, your sociologists, your counselors, that group of direct help to students. And so we hired several. And if you look at that line, we budgeted $1.3 million. We've expended $501,000. We have $802,000 in payroll encumbered. And so that only leaves right at $31,000 in that line. So why that shows 98% is because we have already taken out the full amount for their salaries for the rest of the year. The only thing that we have left in that support services for students would be anything budgeted for supplies, equipment, materials, and that kind of thing. So it's unrelated to the student activity you saw on the revenue side.
Can the CARES money be used to pay these people who assist students during this time after school, tutor, that type of thing? Could that CARES money be used as part of that?
I think some of those are already being paid for with grant money specifically related to tutors. There's COVID recovery tutors that we got a grant for. So some of those are already covered under that.
We have some through special ed, I think, some
Yeah.
through
Federal
Jody Nichols's, the federal program. So we do have tutoring for the schools. And so it would be hard to pay for that, as she said, if it's already federally funded.
But on the same breath there, if additional tutoring was provided as a result of COVID, yes, I don't see why. If it was a need that we provided that service after school and it was related to COVID, it would probably qualify just fine. And we do. We had that CARES money, and then I think special education wrote a competitive grant for federal funds, and then we got this new money coming. So hopefully any expenses related to COVID will be covered.
You know, I would think after we are able to get everybody back full time and do some testing, see where they're at, that we might be hiring extra tutors and stuff.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. That's a great
Because they
idea.
haven't been in school for a year almost.
Yeah. Any deficiencies we have, that would be great to great use of those
Catch
funds.
up, yeah.
So that's your general fund.
Mr. Moose had a question there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On that page.
But he's looking down at another page right on down here, I think.
Same page.
Same page?
Food service, 496%.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That must be the CARE money, huh?
Would that be 49.6?
No, that's actually, we budgeted, that's a very small line item. I'd even have to go look at it and see. We only budgeted $495, but we spent $1,964. So we're technically overspent on that line by almost 500%. Generally, food service is covered in our special revenue fund, which is a couple pages down. Only in instances where the county is covering an expense on behalf of food service that wouldn't necessarily qualify as a food service expense would we run it through the general fund. So,
Would there be groceries for like instruction, something like the catering program or something?
I don't know. I'll have to go look at that one. I'm at a loss unless you know, Sherry.
It's not 6-1, is it? Because I code everything.
No, this is 11. I'll look and I'll report back at our next meeting what that's for. I'll just take it out of Sherry's pay.
I code everything to 6-1.
I'll definitely check that one. So that's your general fund. And then the next page talks about our debt service, which we had no expenses, and then expenses related to our building construction, $175.8 million, $175,814,000 budget. In this year, we've spent $4.9 million, which leaves about $170,901,000 yet to spend. Our special revenue expenditures, $11.2
Oh,
million.
there's where the building improvement shows a negative balance. What does that mean? 394,000, 395,000.
That means that was on,
It's actually building improvement.
What is it?
It's building improvement.
yeah, it's on the building improvement.
It's year-to-date expenditures, but it's a negative balance.
Well,
Does that mean you overspent there?
Well,
or-
it looks like that. But what really happened is, this is the last payment, or I'm pretty sure this is the last payments on our roofing project.
Oh, okay.
And so we paid it in this year, and we're still waiting on our reimbursement from that whole project. So it looks like we had an over expenditure, but we didn't have a budget in there, so.
So
Okay, gotcha.
in that capital improvement fund there, you are including the SBA major improvement projects along with FEMA.
Yes, that includes anything, any project we have that's over $500,000 gets put into this fund.
Back that food service thing a while ago, that wouldn't have been where we had to replace the floor up in the middle school pod, and we had to use was it the armory we used
To do this food
to do
service.
some food there?
All of that should have qualified for food service expenditure. Typically, when you see a food service expenditure in the general fund, like I was talking about that retirement on behalf of money, the state pays the retirement board money directly on our behalf. And so we have to book that as revenue. We also have to book that as an expense, but it's for all of our employees. And so it's kind of really unrelated to the federal food service program. It's state money. So at year end, you'll see where I expense that retirement on behalf of in the general fund for our employees. And typically, unless it's something like that, you usually don't see anything in that general fund. It could be just a typo. We hit an 11 instead of a 61 in the funding. So I'll go back and check that, and I'll let you know what it was all about.
Well, when you look at the percent, it looks enormous, but when you look at the amount, it's only $1,500. So that's small, that's
Right.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It won't be anything
right. Okay.
to absorb if it does belong there.
I think you did have a little bit budgeted towards it, whatever it was. You did have some budget
Yeah, a little
towards
bit,
it,
a little
or
bit.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, so-
$395. That's a hard number, Kevin.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss for that one, but I'll find out. Your special revenue fund, on the budget side, $11.2 million budget. We've expended $3.1 million, $2.9 million encumbered for payroll, which leaves about $5.1 million for supplies. And then the stimulus money, or the CARES money, $1.2 million. We've spent $816,000. We have $24,000 encumbered, which leaves about $400,000 yet to spend in that. Now, what we probably will do, some of the county expenses that we have incurred, we'll probably move those into this fund. if there's not greater needs. You know, like I said, we'll try to cover all of our code expenses, so there's really no reason that the county would absorb any expense related to COVID when there's funds available. So we'll be evaluating this and looking for expenses that would qualify that we've had and probably move it into this account before year end. And then there's your expenditures. You can see by far we've spent more on regular and secondary education. And then if you kind of want to compare that graph to budget, it kind of shows you a little bit about how we stand in relation to our budget. Any questions on the treasurer's report?
Just a clarification on the 428 plan, 175 million. Now, we've already spent 4 million
Mm-hmm.
of that. We're down now to 170.
Yes, and we spent a couple $1 million in the previous year. So remember, it started out at 177 million. So that you're only looking at the transactions that occurred this year. But that balance available should be the amount that we're looking at right now, as of December, for that remaining project.
But there's no interest in that for the county. That's sent to us by the federal government, that they send it to the state, and then the state sends it to us. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so we,
Reimbursement. This is
We-
reimbursement, yeah.
we're, as we're depositing that check, we are mailing out, as we're depositing the money, we're mailing out the checks. And, you know, we're not allowed to keep any interest off of those funds anyway, even if we did have it. So I think they let you keep $500 a year or something like that. So it'd be nice to earn some interest on that kind of money if we even had it, but it's not even here.
I'm glad you asked that question, because we've actually had some people think that we have $177.5 million in the bank, drawing interest and can invest it and all kinds of things like that. And none of that's accurate.
Well, you have to get a bill, and you have to send it in and get it approved.
That's on this project. Now, the PWs that we had early on, they would send you 75% of it, and then you would turn around and pay those bills, and then once your project was complete, they would send you the remaining 25%. But we're still not allowed to earn any interest on that. Any interest will be returned to the government.
I don't think there's anything to this, but that's not in danger since we're under a different administration, is it?
The 428 plan should be pretty solid.
Yes, admitted.
Some of them up there,
I didn't even get Mr. Tank going there.
All right, the last item on finance agenda is the contracts. There was some additional reporting, some analysis that was required. I believe it was a GASB statement 87, if I'm not mistaken, but it was going to require, it was passed and made effective within this term. And as you know, we put our auditors out for bid for 3 years at a time. And so many of the counties across the state, they already had these auditors that had bid a price. And now all these additional testings was going to have to be performed. And so they're allowing those independent accounting firms to amend their contracts to help offset that additional testing requirement. And so this contract that we have with Fife Jones Group, they're our independent auditors. Their contract price was $16,910. For the additional testing, it's going to cost $750. And so their amended contract price is going to be $17,660. And so I'd like to ask the board to approve that contract amendment, which increased their price by $750, which really isn't that bad.
What was the reason?
They're called generally governmental accounting standards that are issued and put in place, different things that we have to abide by being a governmental agency. And so when those are passed, there's certain criteria that as an auditor they have to do to test it to make sure that we're following what we're supposed to. And so it was passed, but these guys, our auditors, already had a contract with us for a set price. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, "Oh no, you got to do this additional testing."
Extra work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
Are the FEMA funds going to have to be audited along with the rest of the budget?
yes, they're audited every year.
The FEMA?
They're part of the audit, yes, every year.
Did they come back in 5 years for a big audit, or?
This is our financial audit, just the finance and compliance audit that we have every single year. So they look to see that we're handling the money right and that it's all good. FEMA themselves will come back after the project is complete and before they close out to make sure that everything was followed and all the support documentation's there. And then at that point, they'll decide from their point of view, if we did everything correct.
Are there any further questions from Mr. Hess in regard to these finance items?
I also want to point out that Mr. Hess, in talking about his financial, since I've been here, there's been 0 findings on financial audits. I think that's to be noted, and that was even prior to my coming here. So Mr. Hess and his office does an excellent job, and I just think it's important to point that out because, of course, there's been many rumors and many false things stated about board finances, and we do have an audit annually, and we come out with 0 findings, and that's rare.
You know, I'll add to that, the last 20 years, I don't think we've had any.
The last finding we had was, I think, 2011, and it
wasn't that much, though.
It was like they found a contract that wasn't signed, or they had it was more of a bookkeeping. We've never had any major compliance issues.
I just think that's important to know.
Yes, it is.
Good job.
Thank you.
It's becoming a very good treasurer.
Somebody trained me a long time ago.
Wonder who that was. Is there a motion to approve consent item A as presented this evening?
So moved.
Mr. Amigbluz, is there a second to the motion? Mrs. Kaufman seconds. Any further discussion in regard to consent item A? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, the motion passes unanimously. Item 8, personnel, Mrs. Adkins. Madam Superintendent, board members, is there a need for an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters?
No.
It's been a while since I've given you the vacancy list, so I have an updated vacancy list for you. And I will read the changes to the updated personnel agenda. The press has been given a copy. I struck the 2 positions under professional. These postings came down Friday. There were no applications for the English as a second language teacher. There are actually 3 of them for the 6th grade teacher at Summersville Middle School. So their hiring committee is meeting on Wednesday, I believe, and we will likely have a hire for that in the next board meeting. Under professional extracurricular, Alexa Spell, employing the position of the Falta Shelter tutor effective February 2nd, 2021. We removed the academic coach because there were no applications for that, and I will repost that tomorrow.
Under consent items, Deborah F. Brown resigns her position as an aide at Birch River Elementary School effective February 27, 2021 due to retirement. Dave Hicks resigns his position as golf coach for Richwood High School effective January 5, 2021. Tony Nichols resigns his position as Federal Programs Director effective July 1, 2021 due to retirement. Bronwyn Moreland resigns her position as Principal Teacher with Nicholas County Schools effective June 30, 2021 due to retirement. And Richard Caulfield resigns his position as After-School Tutor for Cherry River Elementary School effective February 1, 2021. And on page 2, you have a leave request that I will not read out loud to protect the privacy of our employee.
Well, does that mean with Mr. Nichols that we'll be into the 10 by then?
Hopefully so. I believe we will be.
Is that Tony?
Yes.
Oh, what's
Yeah.
Nichols, and isn't it
For
Nichols?
us,
Nichols, N-I-C.
yeah.
We
Yeah,
got
it's
Nichols.
Okay, I'll fix it, sorry.
Okay.
And we're losing Mrs. Moreland over at Birch River.
Great
Done
loss.
a great job over there. So we've got some positions that are going to require some,
Great losses for this county.
yeah, Miss Murphy then, but,
And you also have the vacancy list there. We still have a science position that's open at Richwood High School that's been open for, my goodness, over a year. So, you know, hopefully we can get that filled. And most of our vacancies, though, are elementary school, which is really kind of concerning. You've got four vacancies at Golly River, and those have all been vacant for over a year. And we've got the vacancy there at Cherry River. It just seems like we've almost constantly got to have a vacancy there.
how long have those two positions been open at Gray Creek Elementary?
Those have been open this entire school year. And I think one of them may have been a first grade position last year that we didn't fill either.
Do we actively recruit from the colleges?
We do.
Yeah, I mean, I posted statewide.
Well, I mean, like, when I was hired, Mr. Mick came to the college campus
Yeah, they've not
and
had,
interviewed us and
they've not-
signed us up before we
Right.
even graduated.
they've not had those this past year due to COVID. So I have reached out, we have MOUs, I believe, with Fairmont State and Concord, and maybe Glenville for teachers and residents, so the colleges are aware of where we're short. And it's not just here, it's statewide. I mean, we have a shortage of teachers statewide.
If you have awaiting principal action, what does that mean?
That, before I post a job, a principal will send me a posting request. So, you know, like right now, you can post jobs for right now, but you've got the pool that's out there may not necessarily be people that you want to hire. So we'll wait till a little bit later on the spring as people are getting ready to graduate and repost then. And these positions are filled with capable substitutes right now. And sometimes you don't want somebody to come in the middle of the semester and kind of upset the apple cart, so to speak, so.
Sometimes student teachers too, if we get student teachers in and they get used to the area or the school, sometimes they'll stay.
Right.
Do we have very many student teachers in our system right now?
I believe we're gonna have 2 or 3 this semester. I'd have to go back and check. I don't remember off the top of my head. But
Do they know we'll take them and we'd like to have
Oh,
them and all that?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, we have a couple of service employees
who are working on their teaching degree. And so we have a couple service employees who are going to be doing some student teaching, who are current employees, but they're an aide or a cook, who are working on their degrees. So hopefully we can move those people over to professional once they graduate and are certified.
And those MOUs she mentioned, those are MOUs for people to come in and student teach.
Right, and also to serve as a teacher in residence, which is a little bit different thing. If they're qualified to student teach, they can serve as what's called a teacher in residence. So they come in and we pay them, I don't know, is it like 60%? Oh, Kevin left. No, there you are. The teacher in residence, we pay them like 60% or something like that. It's a percentage, and they're student teaching, but their student teaching is filling a vacancy for us, and then once they graduate, then they can move into that position permanently. So we had a math teacher at Richwood High School last year that was a teacher in residence. They have to have passed all of their praxis exams and be eligible for student teaching, and they came and taught the entire semester.
Yeah, a lot of those people stay.
Yes.
If we can get them in the system.
Yes. And unfortunately, we lost that person, if I recall correctly, and I may be mistaken, but they got married and their spouse worked away somewhere, but we didn't get to keep them. But at least we had someone in the position for that length of time. So
It's kind of a different day. I'm sure Mr. Berry, Mr. Luce, and Mr. Hendrick and I can remember the days when it was pretty competitive to get a job in education. They'd say elementary teachers are a dime a dozen, you know, and that's not the way it is anymore. So,
I know before I retired, they asked me to go to recruit. And the kid said, hey, I can make more money out of state.
yeah,
And it was hard then, and it's even getting harder.
yeah,
We've got to raise their salaries, don't we?
yes.
We're going to get them.
Yeah, I think a lot of them would like to be here, they just don't make the money that they can't support.
any other questions from Mrs. Atkins in regard to personnel?
Well, we're glad you're back.
Well, I'm glad to be back. I miss being here.
Sounds better, doesn't it?
Feeling a little better finally, maybe, so good.
Let me ask you a question. If your toes are getting cold, is that a sign that you're getting it?
Well, actually, my toes stayed cold until I got COVID. Then they didn't get cold anymore, so I don't know, man. I got COVID and my feet got warm.
That's a sign.
We've got some tight people working in this.
It stays cold in here.
It's what?
It stays cold.
Is there a motion to approve personnel as presented this evening?
I make the motion.
Mr. Berry moves. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Mrs. Kaufman seconds. Any further discussion in regard to the personnel agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, the motion passes unanimously. Item 9, Superintendent's information on construction planning, architectural update.
Just did a follow-up again today with our architect, and the H&H study came back, I think it was last week, for Richwood, and at that time it was sent on to the consultant that Richwood has retained, and the consultant did not accept the H&H study because it showed a 0.11, I think it was, rise 850 feet downstream. So it was not accepted because they wanted it at 0, which means they have to revise a plan to remove
I believe what they're doing is they're revising the plan to remove a section of the parking lot that was installed. And then once that section of parking lot is removed, then we will no longer have a zero, we will have a zero rise downstream. So they do know how to fix it. I'm hoping that they get that plan in quickly. They are actively working on it. And as soon as they do, it will be resubmitted to their consultant for review. And hopefully it's approved. Once it's approved, at that time, the architect will be prepared to come back and present this board with a plan for the new campus and ask for approval. And once that approval is received, we will be able to move forward with releasing for contractors to bid on the bid packages. The challenge now is I can't come forward or won't come forward to this board and ask for an approval of that campus until we have an approval of that floodplain permit from the city. And the reason for that is FEMA, it's required, and we will have to give we need to make sure this board's reimbursed, or we'll be on the hook. So with their requirement of having the permit signed, I just can't move forward at that point. So hopefully it will move pretty quickly. And the architect, I've asked him to come back on the 15th to present updates, not only to the Cherry River, but for the Glade Creek campus. I'm hoping that bid package should be put together soon, and then we can bid out for an environmental or DEP permit for that location as well, and get the bid packages out. So things are moving. We just have to, wait for some permits to be signed.
Well, let me ask you a question. How many parking places are you saying that you're going to have to tear up?
I believe the architect said they'll probably have to remove 20.
20.
So does that
If
bottom
someone
tier, the bottom?
would contact the consultant and say, look, we're going to lose 20 parking places, would they change their mind? Do they know that they're going to lose 20 parking places?
They'll know as soon as they get the plan. They'll receive a plan, and that plan will tell them how much. I don't know if it will say 20 parking spaces, but it will talk about how much of that parking area will be removed. But you have to understand, with the city requiring the H&H study and requiring a zero rise, there would be no reason for them really to come back and say, well, we don't want to do it now, because we've already spent, what, $20-some thousand and having the study done, and what, a couple months into it, and having the study done. So, I mean, I really don't know of any reason. Their goal is to have zero, and that's their right to say with them with zero rise. So to have zero rise, that's what will have to happen. I will tell you that I'm guilty of trying to give them as much parking as I could. So because trying to give as much parking as I could, I guess it encroached some. To give that inch or two rise downstream. So, like I said, they'll just have to remove it, and it'll all be good.
What will create, how will that create no rise by removing the parking? Is that making the river wider than?
Yes. I really pushed to get as much parking as I could. We are already exceeding the recommended parking spaces per policy. But, again, I've tried to be as generous as I can. And I've asked when they were doing the work if they could, try to use as much, give as much parking as they possibly could. So they did, and I guess in that effort, it, is going to cause this, it's a very minor rise. But, again, that's their right to ask for zero rise, and with asking for that, we'll have to accommodate that. And we will. I mean, it's not a problem. It can just be, it's all paid, so we'll just have to saw off part of the parking lot and it'll, be pulled out. It's unfortunate, but that's their call.
I'd just like to go back, and the architect was here last week, and he did say, as you just said a moment ago, that we actually were exceeding, right, even with the loss of that, we'll still be exceeding the number of parking slots that policy would require for a school that size. And so we were trying to go above and even beyond that and make sure they had ample parking for all the events that they might want to have. And so, but with even cutting those off, we are still within the guidelines of the state and exceeding that. So that's, I think that's a good point. I'm wondering if Mr. Amy's question is more like, FEMA allows the city to determine in their own floodplain document, the city's floodplain document, what they will accept or what they won't accept. And so they have said they're not going to accept anything that is other than a zero rise level.
Correct.
Okay, that's the city that says it, not FEMA, not FEMA. FEMA allows the city to go develop their own plan, and the city then can respond to that however they wish to. So could they say, well, we'd rather keep the 20 spots and we'll accept the 0.11 rise down the road? I would think the city could do that.
That's what I've been told.
So, I mean, you know,
Well, that was my question.
yeah, that's what I was thought
But
your
I'm
question
just not
was.
sure why they would accept that and say, well, don't remove those parking spaces when we were required to go ahead and do the H&H study, spend the money and spend the time on it. So, yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, what I've been told is yes, they're in the driver's seat on this. The city is. So
We have a mitigation plan now, which in order for us to address the rise, we're going to have to go on our property where we can address it and cut out the parking slots there to get the width of the river down or whatever it is to take down that rise that's 850 feet downstream of about that much.
in all fairness to us and to the architect, the plan on their website is a plan that is not the one that they're seeking for us to follow, which I've stated before. And it's not published. It hasn't been published. There's a plan, I think, from 2004 that's on their site. So, you know, we followed their plan, and I have no idea when the other one was passed or why it's not known for people to see and follow. I don't know. But what I do hope is that they hurry up and get this, you know, mitigation of how to get this zero rise in, and we'll get it in and hopefully get it signed and just move forward.
You would think, I mean, and it has nothing to do with it, but if there's a bottleneck right there, you would think the rise would be upstream.
That's what I was thinking. That makes sense to me that the rise
I
would
mean,
be down.
I've never seen that work that way.
I don't know. They said
guess I don't
they said
understand.
downstream. Yeah, it's downstream.
Well, if they take the asphalt off, will they still have the gravel there that they can park on the gravel?
No, it's all come, no.
No?
They'll have to taper that down.
Yeah, it'll be tapered, is my understanding, yeah. They'll saw it off and then they'll physically remove the dirt, and, yeah. So one of the other things that's really important that we get this resolved is we have to, Tammy Gregory submits and presents to this board, you know, our calendar, and we're really, we have to get a calendar submitted. And we have to work with this phasing plan in determining the, to give a longer time frame, like for 2022, for the workers to go out and do their construction work, which means we'll have to start school, you know, early August, mid-August, so we can try to get out by the end of May. So we really have to get this calendar in place. So, so a lot of it's going to hinge on when this H&H study gets approved, and we've got some pretty quick legwork we got to do.
So you're speaking of the calendar for school year 21-22, which is next school year.
Yes.
Because we're going to have to move the plots out of the way
Yes.
for that phase of the construction to begin. So in order to do that, we have to start school earlier so we can have kids out of the.
Yes.
I got you.
Yes. Yes. It's a lot of It's a lot to be done, but I mean, we've got it figured out. They've done a really good job, and, you know, that's what they're in the business to do. I mean, it's something they do all the time with the phasing but yeah, those pods will be removed and they'll start working. So you'll start seeing some good progress at that school and at Glade Creek
So
this
the
summer.
bid then is going to go out for Cherry River to actually start building construction. But the bid for Glade Creek is going to be the grading package.
It'll be the grading practice. That's right, because there's, right now, the work that's being done at Cherry River is that, their earthwork package, their grading package. So that's already been out. So our Glade Creek one will be going out. So it'll, you know, we'll want to bid the schools at 2 separate times. So anyway, it depends. I mean, if we can get this H&H study through and get the permit, we'll be in good shape. We'll move forward and we'll get these kids in permanent schools.
Yeah, it seems like if your person's not used to big projects like this, that all these packages, studies and everything take longer than the building itself would.
Takes a long time.
Seems like it's been that longer, you know.
It takes a long time.
It's
There's
really, you don't realize it, you know.
Yeah, all the
Maybe they take
permits
it long,
and the
they
environmental
should, well.
studies and all the different permits you have to give. And I mean, it takes a very long time.
How long is this gonna set us back?
The approval of the floodplain permit, and it just depends. I mean, if we can get it in, if we can get our revisions in this week, their consultant did a pretty quick turnaround last week, so he was very responsive. So if he responds as quickly, you know, this time, and we have the approval, I mean, we should be in good shape. We'll be able to stay on target. If not, then the phasing plan is not going to fall in place, and it's probably going to delay us a year for the Cherry River campus. So it's something that we just need to move. We need to get moving, because with phasing, that's critical at that site.
Has anyone told the Richwood consultant that they're gonna lose 20 parking places if they want to go with that, like Mr. Kenny said, half inch, or?
The plan that he will be receiving, I'm hoping they have it out this week. They're working on the drawings right now. It will indicate exactly how much is going to be removed. And the architect says, you know, it needs to be removed from our property, because that's, you know, there's a lot of different reasons. He said, but it needs to come from the property that's owned by the board, so we can control, you know, everything in that area.
Was there a place in the paper to submit to the consultant that says, we're going to remove part of the parking lot? However, if you do not want us, if you okay it, we will not remove part of the parking lot and we can move on?
Well, I guess that once they look at it, the only thing I know is when they submitted it, the H&H study last week, he said they would not approve it without zero rise. So now we're at the point, we're going in, making the revision, it's going to have the plans, and it's going to say this is what we're going to do. So I would think that if he's looking at it, or the mayor, or city council, or a floodplain manager, you know, they're going to look at that and say, okay, do we really want it to be zero rise? Do we not? I don't know. I mean, that's their call on it. That's their call.
But again, they can come back and say, we'll accept the fact that there's a 0.11 rise downstream, and we want to leave the parking slots, and we'll approve your permit.
I mean, we don't have a problem. I mean, the architect, I mean, I have no reason to come ask this board to, you know, not allow that. I mean, the intent was to give them as much parking as possible. I mean, it's paved, it's ready, and before the final coat goes on, you'll see lights. It'll be well lit in that parking lot, and then a final coat will go on. So
So it's really in the city's hands right now.
It's really in their hands. I mean, they'll just have to make the call on it. So, and that's all I have.
Any further questions for the superintendent?
Roy, where would that be, 800 feet? Down near the septic, where the septic line or the processing tank down there was? Across from Go-Mart, that big Go-Mart?
Yeah, down
Down that
Middletown, right there where those houses are, along there. On the left-hand side of the road where
Right.
it's lower.
And you never know, an inch may mean the difference between it actually getting in someone's house or not.
Yeah?
You know, I mean, like I said, I don't, not my profession, I don't understand, don't know all that there is to know about that, but like I said, an inch to us, then, or maybe it's less than an inch, to us, seems like no big deal, but if it got in your house, it would be a big deal. So, I get it, but that's just a call they have to make.
Well, we've done our part. We did the
Yeah.
H&H study, and we have now, we're getting ready to submit a mitigation plan,
Yes,
and that's our part.
yes.
Any further questions for the superintendent? Hearing none, item 10 on this evening's agenda, reports on the SESC. Again, we will meet later this month. The January meeting was canceled, so there's no report on that. Mrs. Kaufman, how about Bright Horizons?
No, that meeting will be later on this month, but I was going to ask Lydia, is there any chance that we may send students back up there? I mean, is there a reason that
Right now,
Need to
Richmond
be-
High School was going last year, 2 years ago. I don't know that they went any, or they did go the first part of last year, before COVID hit. And right now, with the way the schedule is, we just don't have the kids to send over there right now.
I was just wondering if there was a chance down the road that...
Oh, I'm sure, once things kind of settle down and we get back in, with them right now just coming A and B schedule and
Yeah.
trying to get them there, and some of our kids that went aren't actually coming, they're distance learners, so. But I think just as soon as we can get settled back down, and I think we'll have kids that'll attend.
Well, I know too that some of them, they were doing things locally rather than have to, go up there and, I know Richwood, they sent some kids, but
Yes.
then they quit sending them too.
And
so-
I think when I talked to Nancy last, because I know last time you reported, the next day I called Nancy. I'm not sure they're even taking adult students that are coming in, are they? Well, not students, but adults. I don't think those adults people are coming in either right now, is what I was told.
I didn't go to this last meeting, but they were starting to filter some back in before
Okay.
that, but it was mainly ones that were working out, like, cleaning some of the office buildings and things like that. I don't know that they were actually coming in there, but, that meeting, it'll be in 2 weeks, so I'll try to get a better handle on it.
Okay, yeah. Is Melissa still the director?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
She is.
Thank you, Mrs. Kaufman. Madam Secretary, are there any delegations this evening?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Items for future agendas?
Yes, I have one. I would like for the board to be able to get a report on the, like, student evaluations, the first semester, how the kids are doing with their grades, or we having a problem with some of them and not being able to pass their classes.
I think back in the fall, did we receive a report that there's a large number of kids who were not passing, and some of them had not even made contact with the school, and
Yeah, that's when we brought them back into school. But then I know that there's been, I've heard quite a few failing, and that they were going to bring them back into the school, make them come back. I don't know if that's happened. I was just wondering if we could just kind of get a report on how that's going.
Are you thinking primarily high school, middle school, or are you wanting for the whole county? The high school, they send me a report. I just got a report from Richwood today on their seniors and those that they, have concerns about.
And we have that. I have it definitely for the high schools. I can get whatever you want.
High schools and middle schools at least.
Donna, has the state put out any guidelines about these students graduating, even if they failed a class or two?
No, there's not been any waiver of credits.
Haven't been
No.
any?
But what we're doing is, we have credit recovery set up for this second semester. So students who failed first semester, a particular class, they can actually do credit recovery with the second semester. I know our social workers are working with students individually. They're going to homes. I know I sat down last week and talked with a parent, with the social worker and principal and a student plan to help this student get a plan in place to graduate. Just literally did nothing first semester, so the student has a lot of work to do for second semester, but it's possible, and the student can see a light at the end of the tunnel and is committed to moving forward, and I think has, definitely will have the opportunity to graduate if the student, works. So I'm actually involved in some of those cases, if it's a real high-risk case, in helping brainstorm.
Now, he's a senior or?
Yes, yes.
Or even promotion in the elementary. Is that going to be a problem that you see?
I'm not seeing the problem really in the elementaries. I'm really not seeing it. It's primarily the high schools and, middle school not, so most of it was the high schools.
I think with the elementary, I think the parents feel comfortable enough that they can help the little ones. But I think when they start getting up in middle school and high school, I remember I used to try to help my grandkids. I have to have the other one. Go ask your sister or brother,
It's pretty rigorous. People, I think, are realizing that.
And it's not what we learned. Not the way we learned when we were in school. Plus, they had the iPad on top of that. So,
Could you add to that the Career Center, how they're coming along with completers and that type of thing? And then maybe Tony could tell us where we are on summative assessment. Are we headed toward annual summative assessment in May? And where we are, I know they gave us some reports on benchmarking a couple months ago, maybe in November. Maybe kind of get us up to date on that. So.
You've got to assess them before you know where they are and what you need to do. So.
Eddie's got his hand up, I believe he wants to speak.
Please speak, Tony.
Can everybody hear?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, in the newsletter this week, there's a blurb in there from Christy Chapman that, yes, they've been notified that, as far as we know, we are going to do the GSA.
Okay, and general summative assessment. Yeah.
Yes, the window has been set, but we'll have to determine in our county exactly what days we want to do it. But yes, I was really surprised that they were going to go forward with that, seeing that everybody's on a different schedule and every county's different, but from what I understand, we are going to take the assessment.
Okay, with most kids only in school half-time, that's certainly going to affect our outcomes.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging.
They make the window longer.
I'm sorry?
The window is longer than what we normally have done, so, and with everybody having a one-to-one device, they should be able to test pretty, not have to do it in stages. Like, used to be test 3 weeks long. With everyone having their own device, they can test on the iPads, they should be able to test technically in a week. If you're there.
Sarah and I have looked at a couple STAR assessments from a couple elementary schools, and we were pretty surprised that the kids were kind of on track. So we have a little bit of informal data that says we're okay. It's not great, but they've maintained, and they're not quite as behind as we thought they might be. So.
Is that just elementary, Tony, or is that middle school and high school as well?
So far, we've just looked at elementary mostly, but the high schools and the middle schools are getting ready to do the middle of the year, that level set assessment that goes with that actively learn. So they're in the process of giving that, so we don't have it all together yet, so I don't know what it looks like quite yet.
Tony, I don't aim to be negative here, but will the requirements to get into the 10 be less this year, since this is a statewide problem?
I don't know. Christy's been on all of those webinars with GSA. I don't know if they're gonna waive anything or not, but I think the good thing is that every county's in the same situation that we are, so I kind of anticipate us maintaining where we are. I think we'll show some improvement. I think teachers have really worked hard with this remote learning, and I think we'll be okay. I don't think we'll be at the bottom.
You are aware that we did not approve you retiring until you get into the 10, right?
Yeah. Heard that, it was a little scary.
Tony, on this next, you say the high schools and the middle schools are about to do this next level of formative assessment, and
Yep, at level assessment.
okay, what's the turnaround time on results? Is it instantaneous? How quickly will teachers know, what the problems are and how we can address them?
Yeah, it comes across pretty active. Yeah, we don't have to wait.
Okay. All righty. Well, we look forward to hearing from you about the results on that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other items for future agendas? Actually, you write those down.
I think
Future meeting dates, rescheduled LSIC meeting next Tuesday night, February the 9th, at Glade Creek at 5 p.m. We'll be hearing from Glade Creek Elementary, Valley River Elementary, Summersville Middle School, Nicholas County High School, and the Career Center. We have a regular meeting on Monday, February the 15th, here at the board office at 5 o'clock. Regular meeting here at the board office on March the 1st at 5 o'clock. And then we have another LSIC meeting Tuesday, March the 9th at Summersville Elementary, and it will involve the reports from Mount Lookout, Mount Nebo, Summersville Elementary School, Birch River Elementary, and Zela Elementary. Anything else?
They may be able to help us out.
Yeah.
What you guys
Mhm.
at the,
At the, yeah, the high school.
uh,
He said that when we have the LSIC for the high school and middle school, will be there. They can probably give us some answers.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
Give Candy a heads up.
yeah, I'll try to get you a report and you can send it out to you.
Is there a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
So,
Mrs. Kaufman and Mr. Berry, you all on the ball this evening.
Roads are getting bad.
All those in favor, say by saying aye.
How many,
Those opposed, like sign. Madam Secretary, we are adjourned
There's
at
actually,
6:43.
there's